People like you are the reason men died for nothing. A ghost hiding behind dirt and silence.
Men like me didn't die for recognition. We live so—
Traitor. The word cut through the damp night air like it had been waiting there for years, just to find him again, and Arthur Hale didn't look up, didn't flinch, didn't even slow the steady motion of his hands as he sorted through the dented metal trash bin behind the diner, the smell of stale grease and rain-soaked cardboard clinging to everything, his coat heavy with moisture, his breath quiet and controlled, like a man who had long ago learned that reacting only gave people more to take, a flicker of neon light buzzed overhead, casting a pale, broken glow across the alley, and beside him, pressed close against his leg, a small gray cat with matted fur and sharp, watchful eyes shifted its weight, sensing the tension before it fully formed. Footsteps approached, boots on wet pavement, confident, deliberate, the kind of sound that didn't belong to someone looking for food but someone looking for control. And Arthur already knew who it was before the voice came again, sharper now, edged with authority and something colder underneath. "Didn't I tell you this town doesn't want you here?" Chief Daniel Briggs stepped into the light, his uniform crisp despite the drizzle, his badge catching what little light there was, a symbol polished to perfection while everything around it rotted quietly, and behind him, two officers lingered, silent, watching, not intervening, not questioning, just waiting to see how far this would go. Arthur slowly straightened, one hand still resting on the rim of the trash bin, the other instinctively lowering to the small shape at his side, fingers brushing the cat's back in a motion so subtle it almost disappeared into the darkness, his eyes lifting just enough to meet Briggs's without challenge, without apology, just a calm, unshaken presence that seemed to irritate the chief more than any insult ever could. "People like you don't get to dig through what this town throws away," Briggs continued, taking a step closer, the faint scent of cologne cutting through the damp air. "Especially not after what you did," and there it was again, the accusation that had followed Arthur for decades, shapeless, unproven, but repeated enough times that it had hardened into something people believed without question. A car passed at the far end of the alley, headlights briefly illuminating the scene, an old man, thin, worn, standing in silence, and a uniformed officer towering over him like judgment itself. Before the light vanished and left them in shadow once more, Arthur said nothing, because he had learned that words didn't matter here, not anymore. Not in a place where stories were written by those with rank and repeated by those who needed something to believe in. The cat shifted again, pressing closer, its tail curling around his ankle, and for a brief second, something flickered in Arthur's eyes, not fear, not anger, but memory, distant and heavy, like the echo of rotor blades somewhere far beyond the rain. Briggs noticed the silence, misread it as weakness, and exhaled sharply through his nose. "That's what I thought," he muttered, glancing back at his officers before stepping even closer, close enough now that the distance between them felt intentional, controlled. "You don't get to stand here like you belong." And Arthur's hand tightened ever so slightly against the cold metal edge of the bin, the faint scrape of his fingers against rust, the only sound he made, steady, grounded, as if anchoring himself to something deeper than the alley, deeper than the town, something that hadn't been taken from him no matter how many times they tried to bury it. The rain picked up, soft at first, then steady, tapping against the pavement, against the metal, against the silence that stretched between them, and somewhere in the distance, a siren wailed, fading as quickly as it came, leaving only the quiet tension of the moment behind, suspended, waiting, as if the night itself knew something was about to shift. The rain settled into a steady rhythm, tapping against the alley walls and pooling along the cracked pavement as Arthur Hale slowly lowered himself back down beside the trash bin, the moment passing without resolution yet leaving something heavier in its wake, something unspoken that even Chief Briggs seemed unwilling to push further, at least for now. "This is your last warning," Briggs said, his voice quieter but no less sharp, as if the words themselves carried weight beyond the moment. Then he turned, signaling to his officers with a brief tilt of his head, and within seconds their footsteps faded into the distance, swallowed by the night, leaving Arthur alone again with the dim light, the smell of rain, and the soft presence pressed against his leg. The cat let out a low sound, not quite a meow, more like a breath-given shape, and Arthur's hand moved automatically, brushing along its back in slow, measured strokes, his fingers tracing the uneven patches of fur as if confirming something was still real, still here, still his. For a long moment, he did not move, did not speak, did not even look toward the mouth of the alley where the world continued on without him, because he had learned that stillness was not weakness. It was control, it was survival, it was the only thing they could not take. Somewhere beyond the alley, laughter echoed faintly, followed by the distant rumble of a passing truck, its headlights briefly casting long shadows that stretched and twisted across the brick walls before disappearing again, and Arthur finally exhaled, slow and steady, as if releasing something he had been holding for far longer than this night, far longer than this town. He reached into the worn canvas bag at his side, fingers moving with practiced precision until they found the object buried deep within, wrapped in a piece of faded cloth that had once been part of something else, something cleaner, something that belonged to a different life, and when he unfolded it just enough for the dim light to catch its surface, the metal inside revealed itself in a dull, uneven glint, warped, scarred, its edges softened by time but its presence unmistakable. He held it there for a second, not studying it, not questioning it, just feeling its weight in his palm, the way it grounded him, the way it anchored him to something no one else in this town could see, and for the briefest moment, the sound of the rain seemed to shift, blending into something deeper, something distant, like the faint echo of rotors cutting through thick air, like a voice carried over static, calling a name that had not been spoken here in years. Arthur blinked once, and the alley returned, cold and quiet, the illusion gone as quickly as it had come, and he carefully wrapped the metal again, placing it back into the bag with the same deliberate care, as if sealing away something that did not belong in this place. The cat shifted again, stepping lightly onto his knee before settling there, its small body warm despite the damp air, and Arthur allowed himself a single glance downward, his expression unchanged. But his hand resting there a fraction longer than before, a silent acknowledgement, a quiet connection in a world that had stripped him of nearly everything else. Time passed, though it was difficult to measure how much, because nothing in the alley marked its movement, no clocks, no voices calling out hours, only the steady rhythm of rain and the occasional flicker of light from the failing sign above, until a new sound broke through. Sharp and uneven, the kind of sound that did not belong to the quiet, raised voices, younger, rougher, carried on the wind from somewhere just beyond the alley's edge, followed by a brief silence, and then the unmistakable tone of fear, thin but clear, cutting through everything else. Arthur's hand stilled against the cat's back, his head lifting slightly, not reacting with panic, not rushing, just listening, the way he always had, the way someone listens when they know that what comes next matters. And for the first time that night, the stillness around him began to shift. Arthur Hale did not rush toward the sound, he never did, because rushing meant reacting and reacting meant losing control, and control was the only thing he had left, so he rose slowly from the damp pavement, the weight of the night settling across his shoulders as he adjusted the worn strap of his bag, his eyes fixed on the narrow opening of the alley where the noise had come from, sharp voices layered over each other, uneven, careless, followed by the unmistakable edge of someone trying to stay quiet and failing. The cat shifted as he moved, landing lightly beside him, its small paws making almost no sound against the wet ground, its gaze following his, alert, aware, as if it understood that something beyond the alley had shifted in a way that could not be ignored. Arthur stepped forward, one careful movement at a time, his boots scraping softly against gravel and broken glass, each step measured, deliberate, until he reached the edge where the alley opened into a side street. Barely lit by a single flickering street lamp, its light swaying slightly in the wind, casting long, uneven shadows across the cracked asphalt. The voices were clearer now, 3 of them, young, loud in the way people get when they think no one is going to stop them, circling around a 4th voice that was smaller, tighter, trying to hold steady but slipping, and Arthur did not need to see the scene to understand it. He had heard this pattern before, in different places, under different skies, but the rhythm never changed. He stepped out just enough for the light to catch him, not fully revealing himself, just enough to shift the balance of the moment, and that was when he saw the boy, no more than 10 or 11 years old, standing near the curb with his back pressed against a parked car, his hands clenched at his sides, his eyes darting between the 3 older kids in front of him who moved with the careless confidence of people who had not yet been told no in a way that mattered. One of them laughed, a short, sharp sound that echoed off the buildings, while another nudged the boy's shoulder, not hard, not enough to leave a mark, but enough to make a point, enough to establish control, and the third simply watched, arms crossed, as if overseeing something he believed was already decided. Arthur took one more step forward, and this time the sound of his boot against the pavement carried, subtle but distinct, cutting through the noise just enough to draw attention, and one of the older boys glanced over his shoulder, his expression shifting from amusement to mild irritation, then to something closer to dismissal as he took in the figure standing in the edge of the light, the worn coat, the quiet posture. The man they had all been taught to ignore. "Not your business, old man," the boy said, waving a hand as if brushing away something insignificant, but Arthur did not respond, he did not argue, he simply moved closer, his presence steady, unhurried, his gaze fixed not on the boys but on the space between them, the lines of movement, the angles, the small details that told him everything he needed to know without a single word being spoken. The boy against the car noticed him then, really noticed him, and something in his expression changed, not recognition, not yet, but a flicker of something else, something like relief trying to surface through the tension, and Arthur gave the slightest nod, almost imperceptible, as if acknowledging a signal only the two of them understood. The three older boys shifted again, their formation loosening, their attention no longer fully on their target, and in that small break, that brief moment where focus slipped, Arthur stepped forward once more, closing the distance not with force but with certainty, placing himself between them and the boy without raising his voice, without raising his hands, just standing there, solid, unmoving, a quiet interruption that did not ask for permission. The street lamp flickered again, the light dimming for a fraction of a second before returning, and when it did, the balance of the moment had changed, not dramatically, not enough for anyone to name it, but enough for the laughter to fade, enough for the tension to shift direction, and enough for the night to hold its breath once more. No one spoke at first, and that silence carried more weight than any argument ever could, stretching thin across the narrow street as the three boys looked at Arthur Hale, not with fear, not yet, but with the kind of uncertainty that comes when something does not behave the way it is supposed to, when a man who should have stepped aside simply did not. The one in front tilted his head slightly, studying him, trying to place him into a category that made sense, but there was nothing in Arthur's posture that matched what they expected, no hesitation, no attempt to explain himself, no demand, just presence, steady and unyielding, like a line drawn without words. "We said it is not your business," the boy repeated, though his voice had lost a fraction of its earlier edge, and Arthur's eyes shifted just enough to meet his, not challenging, not hostile, but clear, impossibly clear, as if seeing through the noise, through the bravado, down to something quieter beneath it. The street lamp buzzed faintly overhead, its light catching the rain as it fell in thin silver lines, and somewhere behind Arthur, the soft sound of small paws against wet pavement reminded him he was not alone, the cat lingering just at the edge of the light, watching, waiting. Arthur took a slow step forward, not closing the distance aggressively, just enough to make the space between them feel different, to shift the balance again. And he spoke for the first time, his voice low, rough with age but steady. Each word measured. "You are done here," no raised tone, no force behind it, just certainty, the kind that does not ask to be believed because it already knows it will be. The boy in front let out a short breath that almost became a laugh but did not quite make it, glancing at the others as if looking for reinforcement, but they were no longer aligned the way they had been before, one shifting his weight, the other looking away briefly, small cracks forming in something that had seemed solid only moments ago. The youngest of the three kicked lightly at the ground, a restless motion that broke the rhythm, and in that break, the moment tipped, not dramatically, not all at once, but enough. "Come on," one of them muttered under his breath, not loud enough to sound like retreat, just enough to suggest it, and the one in front hesitated for a second longer before finally stepping back, just one step, but it was enough, because once space was given, it could not be taken back the same way. They turned without another word, their footsteps fading into the night, their laughter gone, replaced by something quieter. Something they would not name, and the street fell still again, the rain filling the silence they left behind. Arthur remained where he was for a moment, not watching them go, not following, just standing there until the space settled, until the tension drained out of the air and left only the quiet hum of the street lamp and the distant sound of traffic somewhere far beyond. Only then did he turn slightly, his gaze lowering to the boy by the car, who had not moved, his shoulders still tight, his breath uneven, his eyes fixed on Arthur with a mixture of confusion and something deeper, something searching. Arthur did not step closer right away, did not reach out, did not ask questions, because he understood that not all moments needed words, some only needed time, and so he simply nodded once, slow and deliberate, a signal as simple as it was clear, and after a second, the boy's shoulders dropped just a fraction, the tension easing enough for him to take a small step forward. The rain softened, the air cooling as the night settled back into place, and for a brief moment, everything was still again, balanced on the edge of something neither of them could yet see, but both could feel beginning to move. The boy did not speak right away, and Arthur Hale did not expect him to, because silence after fear was not emptiness, it was recovery, it was the mind trying to catch up with what had just happened, and so Arthur remained where he was, giving the space time to settle, his posture relaxed but grounded, his presence steady in a way that did not demand anything in return. The street lamp above flickered once more, then steadied, casting a clearer light across the boy's face, revealing features that did not belong to this alley. Clothes that were clean despite the rain, shoes that had not worn down against years of pavement, and something else, something in the way he held himself, in the way he looked at Arthur, not with the guarded distance of the town but with direct, searching attention. "Thank you," the boy finally said, his voice quiet, careful, as if testing whether the moment was truly over, and Arthur gave a slight nod, nothing more, his gaze shifting briefly toward the street where the others had disappeared. Confirming what he already knew, that they were gone, that the danger had passed, at least for now, the cat stepped forward then, weaving lightly around Arthur's legs before pausing near the boy, its head tilted slightly, curious but calm, and the boy hesitated for a second before lowering his hand, slow, unsure, until his fingers brushed against the cat's fur, the contact brief but enough to draw a faint, surprised breath from him, as if the simple act grounded him more than anything else. What is his name?" the boy asked, glancing up again, and Arthur looked down for a moment, his hand resting gently against the small shape beside him. "Ash," he said, the word quiet, worn with time but steady, and the boy nodded as if committing it to memory, repeating it once under his breath. A car turned the corner at the far end of the street, its headlights sweeping across them before slowing, then stopping entirely, the engine idling low, and Arthur's attention shifted instantly. Not with alarm but with awareness, his body adjusting subtly, positioning without thought, placing himself slightly between the boy and the road, the movement small but precise, instinctive. The driver's side door opened, and a man stepped out, tall, broad-shouldered, his coat pulled tight against the rain, his expression sharp even from a distance, and the moment he saw the boy, something in his posture changed, urgency cutting through whatever composure he had carried with him. "Ethan," he called, his voice controlled but edged, and the boy turned immediately, relief flashing across his face as he took a step forward. "I am here," he answered, his voice steadier now, anchored by recognition. The man closed the distance quickly, his eyes scanning the boy from head to toe, checking, confirming, before his gaze shifted past him and landed on Arthur, and in that instant, the air changed again, not with hostility, not yet, but with assessment, the kind that measured without speaking, that evaluated before deciding. Arthur did not move, did not explain, did not offer anything beyond what he already had, which was presence, and the man studied him for a second longer than necessary, his expression unreadable before he placed a hand on the boy's shoulder, firm, grounding. "You should not have been alone," he said, his tone softer now, directed only at the boy, but his eyes never fully left Arthur. The rain eased again, falling lighter now, almost drifting, and for a brief moment, the street held its breath once more, caught between what had happened and what was about to follow, as if the night itself understood that this encounter was not the end of something, but the beginning of it. The man's hand remained firm on Ethan's shoulder, not restraining, just anchoring, a silent confirmation that the boy was safe now, but his eyes stayed locked on Arthur Hale, measuring, calculating, trying to place him in a world where everything had a category, a rank, a record, and Arthur did not fit into any of them. "What happened?" the man asked, his voice controlled, each word deliberate, and Ethan glanced up at him before looking back at Arthur for a brief second, as if making a choice about what to say. "They were following me," he said, his voice steady now, and he stopped them, and the man's gaze sharpened slightly, shifting again to Arthur, this time with more focus, more attention, as if the outline of something had begun to form but was still incomplete. Arthur did not respond, did not step forward, did not claim anything, because he had never needed recognition to act, and he was not about to start now. And that silence, that refusal to take credit, seemed to unsettle the man more than any explanation would have. "Did they hurt you?" the man asked, his tone softening again as he turned back to Ethan, and the boy shook his head quickly. "No, I am okay," he said, then hesitated, his hand unconsciously brushing against Ash's back again, grounding himself in the moment. He just stood there, and they left. And that was the closest thing to truth that could be spoken without unraveling everything else. The man nodded once, absorbing it, but his eyes returned to Arthur, narrowing slightly now, not in suspicion, but in curiosity, the kind that comes when something does not align with expectation, when a man who should have been invisible had just altered the course of events without effort, without force, without explanation. "You live around here?" he asked, the question simple but loaded, and Arthur tilted his head slightly, not quite a nod, not quite an answer, just enough to acknowledge the words without committing to them, and the man exhaled quietly, as if adjusting to a conversation that was not going the way he was used to. The rain had almost stopped now, leaving behind a damp stillness, the pavement reflecting the streetlight in soft, broken patterns, and somewhere in the distance, the low hum of another vehicle approached, growing louder, more deliberate, until it turned the corner and slowed. Headlights sweeping across the scene before settling, the familiar outline of a police cruiser came into view. Its presence immediate, unmistakable, and as it rolled to a stop, the driver's side door opened with a sharp, practiced motion, and Chief Daniel Briggs stepped out, his posture rigid, his expression already set before he even took in the full scene. His eyes moved quickly, first to Ethan, then to the man beside him, recognition flashing instantly, followed by something more calculated, something sharper, and then finally to Arthur, where his gaze hardened completely. "Sir," Briggs said, addressing the man with immediate respect, his tone shifting in an instant, polished, controlled. "We have been looking everywhere," and the man gave a brief nod, acknowledging him. "He is fine," he said, his hand still resting on Ethan's shoulder, but Briggs was already stepping closer, his attention dividing, one part fixed on maintaining his composure, the other locked onto Arthur with a focus that carried none of the respect in his voice. "I see that," Briggs replied, his eyes narrowing just slightly as they lingered on Arthur, then dropping briefly to the cat at his side, then back up again, and in that brief exchange, something unspoken passed between them, something colder than the rain, something that had nothing to do with what had just happened and everything to do with what had been building long before this moment. The street fell quiet again, the air tightening, and Arthur remained exactly where he was, unmoved, unshaken, as if he had already seen where this path would lead and had accepted it long ago. Chief Daniel Briggs did not rush his next move, and that was what made it dangerous, because restraint in a man like him was never about patience, it was about control, about choosing the exact moment to shift a situation in his favor, and as the rain thinned into a light mist, he adjusted his posture slightly, squaring his shoulders as he stepped closer, placing himself just within the circle of light cast by the street lamp. His presence now fully established. "Ethan," he said, his tone softening again, careful, measured, "you had us all worried," and the boy glanced up, nodding once, but his eyes flickered briefly toward Arthur before returning, a detail small enough to miss, but Briggs did not miss things like that, not when they mattered. "I am fine," Ethan repeated, and Briggs gave a short nod, then let his gaze drift, slowly, deliberately, until it settled back on Arthur, holding there, longer this time, as if confirming something he already suspected. "This man," Briggs said, his voice casual on the surface, but edged beneath, "has been causing disturbances around town," and the words hung in the air, carefully chosen, vague enough to shape perception without needing proof, and Arthur did not react, because he had heard versions of this before, spoken in different tones, in different places, always with the same intent. The man beside Ethan shifted slightly, his expression tightening. "He just told me he helped my grandson," he said, his voice calm but firm. And Briggs nodded immediately, as if expecting that. "Of course," he replied, "and we appreciate that." A pause, just long enough to redirect the narrative, "but that does not change who he is," and there it was, the line drawn, not loudly, not forcefully, but with quiet authority, the kind that reshapes a moment without raising a voice. Arthur's eyes remained steady, fixed somewhere just past Briggs, not avoiding him, not confronting him, simply refusing to engage on terms that had already been decided long ago, and that refusal seemed to tighten something in Briggs's jaw, a subtle shift, barely visible, but there, we have had reports, Briggs continued, his tone still measured, still controlled, of him trespassing, of him making people uncomfortable, and he gestured lightly toward Arthur's bag, toward the worn coat, toward everything that marked him as someone outside the boundaries of what the town accepted, and in situations like this, we need to be careful about who we trust, the implication settling into the space between them. Ethan frowned slightly, looking between them, confusion returning. He did not do anything wrong, he said, his voice small but clear, and for a brief moment, the air shifted again, the balance threatening to tilt, but Briggs moved quickly, smoothly, stepping in just enough to close that gap. I am sure he did not mean to, he said, redirecting, softening, but sometimes people are not what they seem, and his eyes flicked to Arthur again, sharp, pointed, a warning wrapped in calm. The man beside Ethan exhaled slowly, his gaze lingering on Arthur once more, searching for something, some confirmation, some contradiction, but Arthur offered nothing, not a defense, not a denial, only silence, the same silence that had carried him this far and cost him everything along the way. The police cruiser idled behind them, its engine low, steady, a constant presence, and Briggs finally stepped back half a pace, just enough to signal the end of the moment on his terms. We will take it from here, he said, his voice returning fully to authority now, and though the words were directed at the man, they were meant for Arthur, a quiet command disguised as procedure. The mist hung in the air, the streetlight humming faintly overhead, and Arthur stood exactly where he had been, unchanged, unshaken, as if the weight of what was happening had already settled long before this night, long before this town, and would not move for anything less than truth itself. The moment did not break loudly, it shifted, quietly, almost invisibly, like pressure building beneath the surface, and Arthur Hale felt it before anyone else did, the subtle tightening in the air, the way Chief Daniel Briggs held his ground just a fraction too long, the way his eyes lingered with intent that had nothing to do with safety and everything to do with control. Sir, Briggs said again, addressing the man beside Ethan with polished respect, we can handle this situation properly, and the word properly carried weight, shaping the narrative without needing to explain it, guiding the outcome before it had even been decided. The man hesitated, his hand still resting on Ethan's shoulder, his gaze shifting once more toward Arthur, searching, measuring, but the uncertainty remained, because there was nothing in Arthur's expression that offered clarity, only that same quiet, unyielding stillness. He helped me, Ethan said again, this time more firmly, stepping slightly forward as if anchoring himself to the truth, and Briggs nodded immediately, his response smooth, practiced, and that is noted, he replied, his tone calm, reassuring, but we still need to verify everything, and his eyes flicked briefly toward Arthur's bag, toward the worn edges of his coat, toward every visible sign that could be used to support the version of the story he was building. Arthur did not resist when Briggs took a step closer, did not step back when the space between them closed, because resistance would only confirm what had already been decided, and he had learned long ago that silence often carried more weight than denial. I am going to need you to come with us, Briggs said, the words simple, official, final, and though they were framed as procedure, there was no question in them, no room for refusal. The cat moved then, stepping closer against Arthur's leg, its presence small but steady, and Arthur's hand lowered instinctively, resting against its back for just a second longer than before, as if marking the moment in a way no one else could see. The man beside Ethan shifted again, his expression tightening slightly. Is that necessary? He asked. His voice controlled but edged with concern, and Briggs responded without hesitation, just routine, he said, the word light, dismissive, we just need to clear things up, and his gaze did not leave Arthur's, not even for a second. The cruiser's engine hummed softly behind them, the faint red and blue reflections from the dashboard lights casting shifting colors across the wet pavement, and for a brief moment, everything felt suspended. Again, balanced on the edge of a decision that had already been made, Arthur finally moved, not abruptly, not in resistance, just a single step forward, slow, deliberate, accepting the path being placed in front of him without acknowledgement, without protest, because he had walked paths like this before, paths shaped by other people's words, other people's authority, other people's versions of truth. Ethan watched him, Confusion deepening, his hand tightening slightly at his side, he did. "Nothing wrong," he said again, quieter now, almost to himself, and Arthur's gaze shifted briefly toward him, just for a second, enough to offer something without words, something steady, something final. Briggs opened the rear door of the cruiser, the motion precise, controlled, and Arthur paused for a fraction of a second before stepping toward it, the rain now reduced to a faint mist that clung to everything, softening the edges of the moment but not its weight. The street lamp buzzed overhead, the light flickering once more, and as Arthur moved, the small metal object inside his bag shifted slightly, its faint, dull sound barely audible, but enough to echo somewhere deeper, somewhere far removed from this street, from this town, from this moment, like the distant memory of something that had never truly been buried, only waiting for the right moment to return. The rear door of the cruiser closed with a muted, final sound that seemed louder than it should have been, sealing Arthur Hale inside a space that smelled faintly of vinyl and cold air. The outside world immediately softened by the glass between him and everything else, and yet nothing about the moment felt new to him, nothing unfamiliar, because this was not the first time a door like this had closed without his consent. Through the rain-specked window, the street blurred slightly, lights stretching into thin lines as Chief Daniel Briggs moved around the vehicle with practiced ease, his silhouette sharp under the flickering street lamp, his posture unchanged, controlled, as if everything had unfolded exactly as intended. Ethan stood near the curb, his small frame still, his eyes fixed on the cruiser, confusion now mixed with something heavier, something closer to doubt, and the man beside him remained silent, his hand no longer resting on the boy's shoulder, his gaze distant, as if trying to reconcile what he had seen with what he was being told. The engine shifted from idle to motion, low and steady, and the cruiser began to move, slow at first, then gaining speed as it pulled away from the curb, the street slipping past in quiet segments, wet pavement reflecting the dim glow of passing lights, buildings rising and falling in the reflection like memories that refused to stay still. Arthur did not look back, did not follow the shrinking outline of the boy or the man or even the alley itself, because looking back would not change the direction, and he had learned long ago that some roads only moved forward, whether you chose them or not. Instead, his hand rested lightly against the worn canvas bag beside him, his fingers brushing against the fabric until they found the familiar shape beneath, the small piece of metal shifting slightly under his touch, its presence grounding, steady, a reminder of something that had once been clear, once been recognized, before it had been rewritten into something else, the faint hum of the road beneath. The tires blended with the soft rhythm of the wipers, each pass clearing the windshield only to have it blur again seconds later, a cycle that felt strangely familiar, as if truth itself worked the same way, revealed for a moment, then obscured, over and over again. In the front seat, Briggs spoke briefly into the radio, his voice low, controlled, the words indistinct but the tone unmistakable, official, final. And whatever he said, it was enough, because the response came quickly, a short acknowledgement that carried no questions, no hesitation, just compliance. The cruiser turned onto a wider road, the lights brighter here, the movement faster, and Arthur's reflection appeared faintly in the side window, layered over the passing city, an older man with a lined face and steady eyes, a man who looked exactly like what they believed him to be and nothing like what he had once been. The metal in his bag shifted again, a soft, almost inaudible sound, and for a brief second, the hum of the engine seemed to fade, replaced by something deeper, something distant, the echo of a voice carried across static, urgent, calling out through noise and chaos, and though the memory did not fully form, did not fully return, it was enough to remind him that there had been a time when his name had meant something different. The cruiser slowed as it approached a set of gates, tall, iron, opening with a mechanical precision that left no room for hesitation, and beyond them, the building waited, solid, unmoving, its windows dark except for a few scattered lights, a place where stories were finalized, where records were written in ways that did not easily change. As the vehicle rolled forward, passing through the gates, Arthur's hand stilled against the bag, his fingers resting over the metal beneath the fabric, and for the first time since the door had closed, he lifted his gaze slightly, not toward the front, not toward Briggs, but straight ahead, as if looking beyond the walls, beyond the present moment, toward something that had not yet arrived but was already on its way.